back of the vehicle and rolled into a tree, which basically stopped us. So yeah, it was a bit of an experience, and hopefully you don't need to go through that again.
The cold front had moved in, but there was no sign of rain, which meant that the 77 crews that survived the prologue would be faced with very dusty conditions, making it difficult to overtake. As always, there were last-minute preparations and repairs. Fond farewells, nervous energy, and some interesting spectators. Piet Haasbroek was still toiling away an hour before the start.
Nee, hier is heeltemal 'n ander probleem as die Kaap. Sy voorste stap aksel se boude het afgebreek en die helpens ook gebreek en toe het ons nou gisteraand laat reggemaak. So ek hoop vandag gaan dit beter met ons sonder probleme.
Dakar rider Alfie Cox was on home ground, but this time on 4 wheels.
The difference between a bike is you've only got a little 2-inch or 3-inch wheel on the ground, and what we do in the bikes is obviously we choose the better line. I mean, if we're braking on grass and there's a bit of dirt next to the grass, we go into the dirt if it's slippery. So definitely it's not the same driving in 4 wheels. You know, you've got everything is sticking out everywhere, and yeah, the grass, every time we came to the Sugarbelt, obviously the winter mornings, the grass is always slippery, and it was a big problem on a motorcycle, and I'm sure it's going to be the same with a car.
Cliff Barker rates the Nissan Sugarbelt 400 as his favorite.
Look, the Sugarbelt's always been very good, well organized, very good terrain, tight, hard on the driver, hard on the car, and it's one of the better races in South Africa. So obviously I wasn't in retirement, I was just resting. And yeah, I'm back, and I'm sure I'll do a few more races this year.
My car's got the independent rear suspension. It's the same suspension that I ran in the Dakar. I think it has probably got a bit of an advantage over this terrain, especially when it's very tight. It's got a bit, so the traction's a little bit better than on the axle car. But we're still sorting the vehicle out. We're still struggling with a bit of oversteer on high-speed corners, which doesn't give you that much confidence. So it's got advantages in some sections, but still disadvantages in others. But I think generally it went very, very well yesterday, and hopefully we can continue like that.
Janiel's car is basically the Dakar vehicle. It's an Evo vehicle that they're busy developing for the Dakar, and they've got an independent rear suspension in it, and I think it showed yesterday on the rough stuff, and the traction that it gets, it's very, very good.
I think we're just going to sit behind Gerard. It's pretty misty out there. It's very, very slippery, especially in the wet in the mornings. We're just going to sit behind Gerard and let's see how he goes, because he's generally fairly reliable, and he's also pretty quick. So let's see what happens from behind.
Ek het al saam met hom regionals gery, maar nog nooit 'n national. So ek was bietjie bangerig gister, maar dit was baie lekker, dit goed afgeloop.
Crews were required to complete 3 laps of the 130-kilometre Blue Route, which included sugarcane service roads, tight forestry sections, and wide-open high-speed stages. A large crowd braved the crisp, misty conditions to witness the start of the Nissan Sugarbelt 400. De Villiers and Jordan were first away in the proudly South African Nissan hardbody and had the advantage of no dust, but the disadvantage of having to sweep or clear the roads of debris or loose gravel. Grobler and Leek were next away in the proudly South African Nissan hardbody. Being a seeded start meant that the results would be calculated on corrected time, whereby the 1-minute dust gap between competitors would be factored out of the final results. And the position held by a competitor on the road would not necessarily be the position in which he or she would be classified in the final results. Sounds complicated, but simply put, if Grobler gained 1 second on De Villiers, he would be the new race leader by 1 second on paper, but still occupy second place on the road. The veteran pair was intent on adding to their rich haul of 4 consecutive victories and adding another win to Nissan's tally of 8 consecutive victories since last year's Nissan Sugarbelt 400. We'll Coleridge and Skoldhammer were seeded third, and in a confident mood, but only time and 390 kilometers of tough racing would tell whether the sweet-sounding V6-powered Team Ford Racing Ranger was a match for the all-conquering Nissans. Sit back and enjoy the ride. The talented pair have the distinction of being the first South Africans to finish in the car category in the Dakar Rally when they finished third in the T1 class in 1999. Clerk of the course, Rex Borum. Brothers Gerard and Lawrence Duplessis won 4 events overall in 2002 in the Liebherr Gymco, and with Gerard behind the wheel this time out, the chasing pack would have their work cut out trying to get past him and wife Quirby. Weir Smith injured a finger on Friday, which required medical attention, but it was unlikely to hamper the hard-charging businessman whose aggressive and rapid driving style in the BMW 540 V8 powered O'Hagan's Kopenhagen Hotel Gymco is always entertaining. Atang Makgakganene and Mike Stangel's Sam Racing Gymco is always immaculately prepared, and their season opening win in the Western Cape gave them the psychological advantage over their rivals. But there were problems. Their race was destined to be short-lived. Foss and Griffith retired from the Nissan Dealer 400 and had some catching up to do if they hoped to defend their production vehicle championship title. The rollover in the prologue hadn't damaged the proudly South African Nissan hardbody too much, and the pair was immediately on the pace. Nashua Mobile Racing switched to Mitsubishi engines this year, with Dawson Rutherford running a 3.5-litre twin-turbo V6 engine in the Chenoweth. They had a Class A newcomer, Gerald Mundell and Billy Bond, in the prologue backed hard on their heels. Mundell moved up from Class B and surprised everyone when he set the fastest special vehicle time in the prologue on the Nissan Dealer 400 recently. Barker and Kampfer were next away in the BMW M3-powered Barker Performance Products Land Rover, now in its 5th season of competition. Barker recently started mountain biking and is a regular competitor in mountain bike events. And Gavin Morton in the Santon Off-Road Accessories Race Co. were one of the leading contenders in Class S for special vehicles fitted with trailing arm front suspensions, and they were followed a minute later by Scott Abraham and Richard Carolyn in the Atlas Copco Chicago pneumatic Jeep, which runs in 2-wheel drive in the 4-wheel drive dominated Class T. Abraham and Carolyn shared driving duties in the 5.9-litre V8 powered Jeep, and this time around Carolyn elected to start the race. Terence Marsh and Graham Thornton opted for the 3.5-litre supercharged Mitsubishi V6 engine for the Nashua Mobile Racing Gymco. Piet Haasbroek and Freddie Schippers from Tosca failed to finish the Nissan Dealer 400 and were hoping to fare better this time out in the Castrol Toyota Land Cruiser. Haasbroek has always been a strong contender in Class D, but has been plagued by front suspension and drivetrain problems on the Toyota. Johan van der Merwe and 16-year-old son Martinez won Class D in the Western Cape in the Chivani Mitsubishi Colt. Martinez is the youngest co-driver in the field.
At the start point, the car couldn't even drive beyond 3,000 RPM, and the engine just cut out from there. And we drove 200 meters, we had to stop, which we've been trying for 2 hours to fix the problem. We couldn't, and unfortunately we're out of the race. The good thing is that whoever wins this race, we're at par with and championship points, will fight to be head above him in the next race. That's all we can say.
Class E for near-standard, normally aspirated or diesel-powered 4-cylinder buggies has come of age, with some competitors producing giant-killing performances. Rotax Max world karting champion and former production car driver Mark Cornier couldn't have wished for a better off-road racing debut when he won the class and finished 3rd overall on the Nissan Dealer 400 in the Castrol Toyota Hilux 2.7i. Local cane farmers Manfred Schroeder and Jack Peckham won the Class E Championship in 2001 in the diesel-powered Team Ford Racing Ranger, and knowledge of the tricky road conditions on which they drive every day would be to their advantage. Reigning Class E champion Hugo de Bruyn and Stefan Ilhoff campaigned a privately entered Toyota Hilux against the Ford and Nissan factory entries. The Freiburg-based crew have proved to be extremely quick in the past and are always a threat to the factory teams. JP Hubert and Errol Hodgson's N1 4x4 Kia Sportage is not short on performance, but has been plagued by mechanical woes in the past. Improved reliability could no doubt produce some class-winning results in the future. Hannes Steyn and Ferdi Segers started off-road racing in 2001 in the Toyota Hilux and were immediately on the pace, finishing third in the 2002 Class E Championship. Proudly South African Nissan pair de Villiers and Jordan had the bit firmly between their teeth and had a comfortable lead over teammates Grobler and Leek. The Grobler Nissan had developed an intermittent misfire, resulting in the V6 engine firing only on 5 cylinders for much of the race, but this didn't appear to faze the multiple saloon car, rally and off-road champion. Enjoy the ride. Valuable time was lost with this wrong slot. Now you're on board with Woolridge and Skoldhammer in the Team Ford Racing Ranger as they pick up a puncture. Their misfortune allowed Gerard and Kobie du Plessis to gain a place in the Liebherr Gymco, as did Weir Smith and Minute in the O'Hagan's Kopanong Hotel Super Team Gymco. The du Plessis couple are diamond prospectors in the Wolmaranstad area and were now comfortably in the lead in the special vehicle category. Weir Smith and Minute destroyed the Gymco's BMW 540 V8 motor on the Nissan Dealer 400 and needed a good result to get their 2003 championship campaign underway.
Yes! It's about time!
Woolridge drove like a man possessed. He hadn't won a race overall since the Carnival City Casino 400 in 2001 and dearly wanted to put an end to Nissan's domination. Voss and Griffith were 4th overall in the Class T proudly South African Nissan hardbody, while Nashua Mobile Racing pair Dowse and Rutherford were 3rd overall in the special vehicle category. Local crew Mandel and Bond in the Prolong Bat were 4th overall in the special vehicle category, but had a hard-charging Buerta and Morton closing in on them. Barker and Canfer maintained a steady pace in the Barker Performance Products Land Rover and were content to be 5th overall for the time being. Haasbroek had made up a number of places, but he would later retire with steering problems. Marsh and Thornton were having a good run, but the Mitsubishi V6 motor later lost an engine drive belt, and they too would be forced into retirement. The Atlas Copco Chicago pneumatic Jeep with Carolyn at the wheel on lap 1 hadn't missed a beat. The crew found the going a little tough in the narrow, twisty forestry sections, but not so Class B leaders Marcus Taylor and Mark de Chalane in the nimble JRE, who had arch rival Gil Nel in the Look Africa truggy piling on the pressure. Paul van der Merwe was third in Class B in the 2-litre powered Orco. Francois Smith's Class B Sandmaster was previously campaigned by Tom Smith and has proved to be competitive in the past. And former production vehicle champions Genil de Villiers and Francois